Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Ryan, and I'm a guide for the Central Park Conservancy. We know that getting to Central Park is still pretty difficult for so many people, so we want to continue bringing the park to you through these weekly walks that we hold every Wednesday at 12:30. Today, we're going to be exploring a landscape called the Point, which is a specific area within the Ramble, the second largest woodland in Central Park. We're going to be together for about 15 to 20 minutes today, and just about all of the photos you're going to see were taken by myself about 7 or 8 days ago. So we will get to enjoy the park right after that fresh winter storm. We'll see a few other photos that we use through different public archives, like the New York City Parks Department, New York Public Library, Museum of City of New York, and the New York Historical Society Digital Public Archives. We will get right into it. Before we do though, just a little bit of info on the Conservancy. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about us, but we are the nonprofit that takes care of Central Park. Our mission is to preserve and celebrate Central Park as a sanctuary from the pace and pressures of city life, enhancing the enjoyment and well-being of all. And I think you'll agree with us as we walk through this walk today and learn a little bit about the work we do at the Conservancy and see some of my favorite landscapes. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We're using Zoom. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with Zoom. If you'd like to say hello or let us know where you're joining us from, please use the chat feature, or maybe drop a favorite memory you've had of some of these landscapes we're walking through. If you do have a question, please use the Q&A feature, and my colleagues, Juan and Ian, are going to be on the back end answering any questions you might have. Last thing you're going to see pop up are a few visitor polls. I'll launch actually a poll right now, and these polls you can vote in, and then I'll share the results once everybody has voted. So one I like to start off with a lot of landscapes, especially specific ones like this, is have you ever visited the Point, which is again a specific area in the Ramble, just above Bethesda Terrace, which is known as the heart of the park. But the Ramble is the second largest woodland in the park, and it's actually my favorite landscape. This is a really cool spot to check out. So if you haven't visited here before, I highly encourage visiting here in the future. Real quick, we'll start jumping into it and I'll let everybody vote and then we'll share that poll. So we're beginning our walk today just outside the park on East 76th Street and 5th Avenue. And as we can see, we still have a lot of that snow, which came just a few days before this walk through the park. So we're gonna be walking through a beautiful winter wonderland. Entering the park here at Children's Gate, again at 76th and 5th Avenue. As we enter the park, not only do we see lush snow covering the sides, we see one of my favorite elements, the lampposts being on. I love when the lampposts are on in these overcast days and add a little bit of illumination in the park. And it's important to remember, the park was not always so nice looking. The reason the Conservancy formed in 1980 is because previous decades to the park were not so nice. There wasn't really a lot of care given, and a lot of things within the park not only were really deteriorated and eroded, but a lot were damaged, like the lampposts and benches. An early project the Conservancy did was fix up the lamps and benches, allowing people to see and sit in the park. This brought in more people to Central Park, and more increased activity led to decreased vandalism and crime. So we also see the perception of Central Park changing, and today we have an immaculate park to walk through. And again, this present day scene with the snow and lamps on is one of my favorite. I also want to point out this little sign right here. We've been sharing a lot of these hashtag #MyCentralPark sayings, which are some of a campaign we started about a year ago, letting both colleagues and public people visiting the park share a favorite quote or memory they might have. I just really love this one, which says, I didn't think my job was essential, but everybody thanks me every day. And I think this year more than ever, this being the last weekly walk of 2020, we can certainly do a little bit of reflecting on how crazy this year has been, but certainly remember the important things like family, friends, and even parks, because these have certainly been a respite for our mental health over this extremely crazy year. I actually will really just quickly share that poll we have though. And it looks like a majority of people actually have visited the Point before, which is pretty cool, but there's still a lot of people that haven't visited. And of course, a lot of people that aren't sure, which of course, really difficult to know if you visited every spot in Central Park, especially since a lot of these spots have interesting nicknames. But we're gonna continue to the Point now. And as we walk by this Children's Gate area, we do see the James Michael Levin Playground, which is closed at the moment because of all the snow it received. But if we walk a little bit further down the park, we don't have to look far to see kids having a good time. As we look over to our right, we are going to see a favorite activity during the winter for kids and adults, sledding on arguably, I think, the best landscape to go sledding in Central Park, Cedar Hill. I actually gave us a weekly walk of Cedar Hill about 2 months ago. So if you do want to learn more about Cedar Hill, check our past weekly walks, which are posted on our YouTube channel. But we'll continue walking down a little bit. And one thing that's pretty funny to see, of course, a lot of sledding going on. We also see sometimes people sled a little bit too hard, which leads to some broken sleds. And we can see some sled graveyards forming in certain areas over here. As we continue walking on top of Glade Arch, we can see why Cedar Hill is one of my favorite areas and probably the best area to go sledding. We leave that path running under Glade Arch snow covered, so people can start at the top of Cedar Hill and ride all the way down to that lower meadow. So if you want to go sledding in Central Park when snow is around, this area around 78th Street and 5th Avenue is probably the best spot. But we came here to check out the ramble, so we're going to keep walking down towards the point. And as we walk along these snowy paths of Cedar Hill, watching our step, we're going to eventually come out to a nice little crosswalk, leading us to this green roofed building. As we walk across the street, we can get a closer look at that building, which is the Loeb Boathouse. The Loeb Boathouse was constructed here in 1954, and on warmer months, it rents out rowboats to sail around the lake, which is located just behind this building. We'll see the lake once we start to get into the ramble. But I did notice there's something just outside of the boathouse, which caught my eye. A snowman. One of the first ones we've seen today, a snowman, snow women, snow animals, all different types of snow creations can be found throughout Central Park. And this one looked a little familiar to me. Taking a closer look, I realized that this is actually a character from a recent children's movie. Some people may have seen the movie Frozen. This is actually, I haven't seen the movie, but I recognize this character from it. This is Olaf, the snowman from Frozen. Now, I thought this was pretty funny because this character is actually built a little bit behind the statue Hans Christian Andersen, which is located near the Conservatory Water, very close to the Loeb Boathouse. Hans Christian Andersen was a Danish storybook writer who's written many stories like The Ugly Duckling, which is pictured right there, as well as The Little Mermaid, The Emperor's New Clothes, Little Matchbox Girl, as well as a story called The Snow Queen. The Snow Queen came out December 21st, 1844, so it's celebrating its 176th anniversary. But the Snow Queen was actually turned into the movie Frozen. So really cool that this snowman built behind Hans Christian Andersen actually has a lot of synchronicity. Really cool to see an inspired story becoming really a present day snowman, probably built by somebody passing through the park. Really, really cool. And as we walk by Olaf, we'll come up to the ramble. Glancing just over to our left, we can see a path that actually leads us down to the point. We're going to see where that path leads in a little bit, but for now, we're going to continue going up north in the ramble. And as we continue going up north, we're going to come up to some of the beautiful croppings of schist that can be seen throughout the park. Manhattan mica schist, the over 500 million year old bedrock of New York, is really the only natural thing in Central Park. The rest of Central Park was landscaped and designed to look natural, but of course, many of these rocks were kept where they are. Some, however, like this boulder we see, were actually intentionally placed. And we see balanced rock being intentionally placed on this little cropping to add a little bit of a natural kind of statue or art piece. You can see it just barely resting though on that bottom. Really, really cool little natural statue we can see as we enter the ramble, especially cool with snow on it too. As we pass by Balanced Rock, we're coming right into kind of the middle of the ramble, walking a little towards the west. And we're going to come to arguably my favorite area in the ramble. We're going to come up to an area known as Avodia Fields, which features the Avodia feeders. Avodia feeders are really just some awesome bird feeders that are placed in this area. These are actually maintained by private citizens, and we actually don't have any affiliation with them. But there are some private citizens that care for these, clean them, and actually fill these with seed during the winter time, bringing in a lot of different really cool wildlife. You can see various types of feeders that will have different types of seed, really attracting different types of birds. And you can see wildlife all over, both in the skies and on the grounds. You can see different types of migratory birds stopping through, like those yellow-crowned sparrows pictured on the left, as well as, of course, regular mammals like that squirrel over there enjoying whatever seeds and nuts fall down to the ground. I think the coolest visitor we got to capture and see while we were here walking through the park was this red-bellied woodpecker, which we can see kind of just sticking right on top of this tree. He offered us a couple, or she offered us a couple really cool photos as it came over to the feeder. And I know it's got a red patch on its head, but this is a red-bellied woodpecker. There is a separate species called a red-headed woodpecker though. But we have a beautiful little red-bellied woodpecker here enjoying Avodia feeders. As we start to make our way just down south from the feeders, we're going to start coming out to the point. Really quickly though, I do want to launch a second poll right now and maybe see if anybody has a fun favorite activity they like to do during the winter. Of course, there's plenty of different things to do. We just saw one of my favorite areas, which is Avodia Feeders. I certainly love going bird watching in all seasons, but if anybody wants to take a vote in that, see what interests we might have doing in the wintertime in parks. As we continue down, we'll pass by some flora like rhododendron. It's not native to this area, but it does fit in quite well, and it's an evergreen shrub that adds a little bit of color to this pretty bare landscape. In some areas, it can be found in large patches that actually cover up and make the park look a lot larger. As we continue walking down some of these curved wrapping paths, we just get these beautiful snowy landscapes in every scene. And eventually we start coming out and seeing that body of water of the lake that was hidden behind low boathouse. And also see something else kind of poking through the trees a little bit. But as we walk closer, we're coming up to a part of the lake known as the oven. Kind of looks quite the opposite of an oven right now. But this portion of the lake is known as the oven because it's southern facing and receives a lot of sun throughout the year, keeping it really warm, making it a great spot for wildlife. But glancing over to the right, we can start to see the point, that peninsula-like area that's sticking out within the ramble. We're going to start walking down that. So as we turn around and walk up the path, we'll see some other fun stuff as we come around that oven portion, making our way to that the point path. And as we walk by, some nice little streams adding a little bit of sound, covering up any of the reminders of Manhattan around us. And on top of nice little streams, we also have a lot of birds over here. Can see birds anywhere in the park, of course, not just Avodia feeders. It looks like somebody left a bunch of bird seed for a lot of different sparrows to enjoy. It's really cool to see dozens and dozens of sparrows and birds clumped together, and then with one step, they all fly away. Fun little thing to see as we walk through various areas of the park. Now, some people may have noticed something on the paths, like the path to the left over there. Some people may have asked, why is there dirt or sand on the path? Some people that may have walked through the park in the winter might have walked down some slippery, icy paths. And let me explain why that happens. Sometimes we'll see areas like this which have some ice and have sand on it. We're very environmentally conscious here at the Conservancy, and we're very careful not to really use things like rodenticide and poisons and chemicals. So in the winter, we try to avoid as much as possible using salts and chlorides and chemicals, especially on paths like this that are surrounding water bodies and on very hilly landscapes. Because if we use salt and chloride, all of that will wash down into that water body of the lake. And it's actually negatively going to affect the salinity of it. It's going to really negatively affect the wildlife like the turtles, fish, and even birds that use it. So by actually using sand on these paths, it allows for traction. And we do end up breaking the ice up with icebreakers by hand, which is very tedious. So it does take a long time. But if you're ever walking through the park and encounter this path, it might be a little annoying to walk on, but remember that it's really going to benefit the wildlife greatly. So there is purpose behind everything in the park, just like the sand. Continuing up, we're coming to the point now. We're finally on this really undescript path, really cool snowy path that takes us down to this peninsula type area. And as we walk down, some of my favorite views, that nice little wooden railway taking us down. Again, anytime we're walking through woodlands, we get rustic architecture, which just adds to the experience of these landscapes so much more. I do actually just want to share that poll now that we got everybody voting in it. And it looks like definitely viewing landscapes, one of the easiest things that we're surely to do as we come in the park, because I mean, how can you not? Looking at all the bare trees with the snow, no matter the season, I think viewing the landscapes is going to be one of the best parts about coming to Central Park. But I certainly love bird watching, got people loving that. Of course, the trees, I love trees and birds, so those are some of my favorite things to see. And it's cool to see a lot of other people agreeing. Definitely a little bit of everything though, for building snowmen or animals, for snowball fights, and then even some snowshoeing and cross-country skiing, which actually does become popular in the wintertime. It's really cool. All right, so we're gonna continue down now, and walking down the point, come up to some more art. I love sharing these snowmen and snow people and snow animals as we're walking through the park, because these are all temporary pieces of art. And as anybody from New York joining us knows, just about all this snow was lost a few days ago from heavy rain. So all of these pictures, all of these views of snowy landscapes, all of these snow creations, they're actually gone now. So it's really cool we're getting to capture this one last time. One last snowy winter wonderland walk for the last weekly walk of 2020. And as we continue down past this tribal snowmen, we'll see a couple little inlets and paths that allow us to get some cool, nifty views of the surrounding landscape. Walking down this one, it'll lead us down a nice, slippery path to get this beautiful view overlooking the lake, as well as Bow Bridge, that cast iron ornamental bridge expanding over the lake. Really cool views, and as we travel back up, I think these views are even cooler than looking out on the lake, seeing these snow-covered paths that look almost virtually untouched. And as we walk up, we'll come to other little pathways like this one on the left, which really allow us a more tight kind of snowshoeing type of area. This is like one of the closest we're gonna get to snowshoeing and hiking. As we walk through this area of the park, it feels like we're in the Adirondacks right now. And as we continue down this path, we actually come up to a little kind of cross section. That path on the left, or sort of straight, is the path that would lead us near the boathouse. So as we're entering the ramble, we took a little quick view to the left. That's that path that's going to connect us to where we are now. So we'll go to the right and kind of get the full circle, heading down towards the water and getting that nice shoreline view, seeing some of the rowboats stacked along the other side as we start to walk along the shoreline. Very carefully taking steps because we can see it's almost untouched, really rocky, really rugged over here, which is what I love to do when I come to Central Park. And as we wrap around these areas, we'll start to see us coming back to that main central path. As we enter back onto this path, again, more beautiful views and some also rustic architecture, like those benches we see pictured just on the right-hand side. Those benches offer us a nice little spot to rest, but also more beautiful views of different buildings, like the San Remo we can see with the 2 points there, as well as, again, more views of the park and the lake and Bow Bridge. Continuing just down the point, we've finally reached the bottom area of the point, the end of this peninsula-like area. And as we come up, we can see a main feature, more rocks, another large boulder of Manhattan mica schist. And of course, it looks absolutely beautiful covered in snow today. Snow would be the only thing we'd really want to see this boulder covered with. And it's important to remember that areas like this, even though they're very serene and lesser visited, we're not always treated so well. This is what the point used to look like. Before the Conservancy took over, we do see a lot of not only erosion and damage to landscapes like this almost non-existent shoreline of the point, but we see a lot of vandalism like graffiti covering those rocks. On top of the point looking not so good, other surrounding landscapes didn't look good either. Just across from the point is Bethesda Terrace. And of course, we saw a lot of damage to the stonework on top of graffiti over there. We can see the point in the background with more graffiti on that rock and really just kind of looking like a sad landscape over there. Today, it's important to remember that a lot has changed, not only perceptions of the park, but certainly the treatment and care for the park. And we're very blessed today to get a more present day, beautiful view of both the point, that area we walked down, which just looks like a lush, snowy winter wonderland, as well as the surrounding landscapes and views, like just behind us from the point, overlooking arguably the busiest area of the park from the quietest area of the park, viewing Bethesda Terrace from the point, one of the special views we get as we travel through the ramble and come to this lesser visited area. So I do want to thank everybody so much. This actually does bring us to the end of our walk, but I do have one last really important poll to launch that I would love if everybody could help us out and vote with. So of course we have, I'm sorry, I didn't share that one, but we have been doing these walks for quite some time, and we are almost coming up on really a kind of year of doing these walks, which is really perplexing to think about. But as we do these walks, we're going to be revisiting some areas. We're going to be kind of capturing different seasons, really just different ideas of different landscapes, but we are going to revisit some. So we want to basically know, what would you prefer to have them title as? If you have any input, please let us know. We have about 36 weekly walks we've done, and we've reached a point where we're going to be revisiting the landscapes and features that we have in the past. The walks are going to be different, and they will differ on the experience of the park and season and things like that. But just to differentiate the weekly walk titles from the originals, we want to know from you, what would you prefer to have them called? Again, even if we revisit the same area, it is going to be different information. We'll make it fresh and new for you. But I do want to, while everybody's voting, take this time to thank you so much for joining us, because again, we love doing these and we hope to really continue doing them for quite some time. We also have plenty of other ways to stay involved. Of course, the weekly walks are continuing, and we have a really, really cool weekly walk happening next week. Ian's going to be taking you on a museum to museum walk from the Metropolitan to the Natural History Museum or vice versa. You'll have to tune in and find out. We also have other public programs like our virtual tours, which are longer 45-minute programs. The next one of those is going to be the Heart of the Park tour on January 5th, which is Tuesday, coming up real soon. And then if you want to learn a little bit about the trees of Central Park, so a lot of people like looking at the trees in the wintertime, we're going to be doing a winter tree tour. You can join me for the winter tree tour on January 7th, which is Thursday at 3 p.m. for both of those tours. And we'll teach you a little bit about different landscapes and different trees in the park. But again, everybody, thank you so much. Again, we really love doing these, and we are really happy to start revisiting areas and really spreading new information. I'm actually going to share the results now. And it looks like we actually have a lot of votes. 50% of votes are coming in for keeping it simple the way it is, weekly walk, ramble, things like that. So we're definitely going to take all this into consideration as we rename the landscapes. So again, on that note, if we do see the landscapes being simply named weekly walk, the ramble, keep in mind we will be exploring different things. We're going to try to keep it as fresh as possible and try to share new information so each walk is a breath of fresh air in Central Park. But once again, everybody, thank you for joining us for our last weekly walk of 2020. Here's to hoping that 2021 is a lot better. But from everybody, for all of us rather here at the Conservancy, thank you so much. Stay safe, be well, and have a very happy new year, everybody. I'm going to keep this poll open, or rather this room open, for just a little bit longer in case there's any last minute questions. But again, from all of us here at the Conservancy, stay safe and be well, everybody.